Good morning to the audience here at Hyderabad. A warm welcome and thank you for making it in time for a morning session. I hope you had a hale and hearty breakfast and I hope you had a good shot of your coffee or your tea. So a very, very warm welcome to our first session here this morning. We're going to be talking about eliminating bias, a counselor's role in educating parents. Today, I'm here from Delhi. I'm Arshita Kapoor, and I'm from the British School, New Delhi. I'm a college counselor, and I've been working in this field for over 6 years now. And it is truly a blessing. And I'd also like to welcome my co-presenters here today.
A very good morning to all of you here. So I'm Chandni Singh. I too am from Delhi and I'm the high school career and college counselor at the modern school Vasant Vihar.
Good morning, everyone. And I'll go by what Arshita said. Thank you for being here at an early morning session. I'm Ritu Dhingra. I work with Vasant Valley and I've been in this profession for as long as I know. Thank you.
So, of course, a very, very warm welcome also to our virtual participants here today. And I hope you're doing well and I hope we're loud and clear and you can hear and see us. So I'm now going to begin with the first session and I hope that this is interesting and what you expect. So starting with something that is very close to our hearts and something that might be a gripe for many of you, but also a very interesting point for most of us. Today, I'm going to be addressing all of you talking about parents. And I'm going to be talking about parents from our own perspective. This is, we have put in a lot of work in this presentation. We've gone and researched a little bit, spoken to a lot of parents at our own schools. But also, this is one way of looking at it. And we're going to be ending with question and answers. So please feel free to ask us whatever you would like to add, you would like to ask. We'll be happy to take any questions in the end. During the presentation, I'm going to be saying a lot of we as parents as well, because a lot of us are parents here. And I don't want to start this IC3 conference thinking that parents are doing something wrong, because they're not, and they're coming from a space where they're trying to do the best for the children, right? And we might look at it very differently, and our perspective is very professional, and it is also the best for the child. But there are two ways of looking at everything, right? Two ways of looking at the coin. And just with that, I'm going to begin. So I'm going to start with a little story. And this story is, it's going to just give you a little insight into how most of us as parents work. And just like I said, there's two ways of looking at things. A king whose only son was fond of martial exercises had a dream in which he was warned that his son would be killed by a lion. Afraid the dream should prove true, he built for his son a pleasant palace and adorned its walls for his amusement with all kinds of life-sized animals, among which was a picture of a lion. When the young prince saw this, his grief at being thus confined burst out afresh. And standing near the lion, he said, "Oh, you most detestable of animals! Through a lying dream of my father's, which he saw in his sleep, I must shut up on your account in this palace as if I had been a girl. What shall I do now?" With these words, he stretched out his hands towards a thorn tree, meaning to cut a stick from its branches so that he might beat the lion. But one of the tree's prickles pierced his finger and caused great pain and inflammation. So the young prince fell down in a fainting fit. A violent fever suddenly set in, from which he died not many days later. We, as parents, try and overprotect our children because we believe that we are trying to do the best that we can for them. But in all of this, sometimes we forget that it could possibly be a disservice to protect them from something that they are meant to see, meant to experience a lot of times. So overprotecting them, trying to make a perfect fit environment for them, could many times not work in their favor. And that is something that we all must remember, that we as counselors, when we are counseling these parents, they are also coming from a space where they try and make sure that they are trying to get the best out for their child. Of course, what comes out of it in the end is very different. because we cannot micromanage everything, and we cannot make sure that we're not giving them the experiences that they deserve and something that is already planned for them, right? So, just an introduction. There are many new age philosophies. There's an overload of information and a lot of pressure to these parents to be able to make sure that their child is where they feel that he or she needs to be. We have parents looking at, in the age of Instagram and Facebook, looking at many theories that could possibly be true, or they could just be Instagram reels telling them how to parent. But they are following all of this, right? And they are just trying to ultimately do the best that they can for the child. But it could work in a great way or it could not. There's also a major overload of information to our parents. So when they start moving towards their college journey, many people, like when we become new mothers, many people will come and say, do this, do that. When kids reach college or they're on their college journey, many people will come in and say, this is the best way to do it. Why don't you hire somebody to write their essay? Why don't you hire somebody to do this? Many people are going to be able to help you, but many times too many cooks will spoil the broth. But that is not a place that the parents are also coming from. Of course, there are many independent counselors that are out there waiting to help all of the kids, but it could again work both ways depending on where the school stands, right? A school could be fully equipped with many counselors on board to be able to give that one-on-one attention to a child, and in that space an IEC could not work in the favor of the child. But again, there could be a school where you don't have the opportunity that the student is given so that they can use the resources, right? So it could work in both ways. Also, overload of information. There are many university reps reaching out to parents, and of course there's many different kind of ways they are reaching out, many things that they are saying. So how they perceive that information is also very, very different. And lastly, something that I find very interesting, and I know that happens a lot in at least the Delhi circles and most metropolitan city circles, is that something that I like to call cocktail talk. Parents want to tell their friends where their kids are going, right? And that is very, very important to them. I'm going to X college and Y college. Sometimes when we are trying to tell them that something is a best fit, it might not be a best fit in their head, because when they're saying it out loud in a party, it doesn't come across as being impressive enough. And we have to try and consider that as well, because we are coming from a culture where we've always been living together. It's not very individualistic, it is very collective. So it is important to also keep that in perspective. And I don't like to put it like that, but I have realized that we have also become, as counselors, we have also become people who are marketing smaller universities sometimes, because until unless parents tend to hear that information, the cocktail talk is not going to be impressive enough, right? So we have to make sure that we change the narrative for the cocktail talk sometimes. So just now moving on to what we can do as counselors to make sure that our parents feel comfortable, because it's easier said than done, right? And we start working with parents much early on. So the first thing that I want to start with is communication. Communication is key for parents. The more you communicate, the more the parents know you, the better it is for you in the long run. So what we like to do is introduce our team very early on. The earlier they start seeing your face and they can put a face to that name, and they know that you're there for them, they know that they don't need to reach out to anybody else. They can then confide in you and make sure that you are aware of the journey that the child is going through. Because if you are aware of what this child is doing across the 3 or the 4 years, the parents also tend to feel much more confident. So introducing the team is number one. Starting early on. The earlier you start meeting the parents, the better it is, because like I said, it's more comfortable for them. One-on-one parent interactions. So try and meet the parents, introduce yourself, talk about the child, make your conversations more anecdotal, because the parents needs to know that you are aware of which student they are talking about, because you are also working with so many kids, right? So when you make your conversations one-on-one and you make them anecdotal, they also become very, very confident, and they know that this counselor will be able to help my child. We can also make sure that we are involving the parents in university interactions. A lot of universities visit the schools, and we tend not to invite the parents for these interactions. And that kind of is a gap between the parents and the students. The information, sometimes the relay of information is very different to the parents. So if you have a direct interaction with the university reps, then the information is clear, and it also makes sure that the parents know that you're all on the same page. Busting their myths. A lot of parents come in with so many myths, and something that I often hear coming from an IB school is that I need to take 3 APs. You don't need to take any APs. You're from a very rigorous curriculum. And that is something that you need to start telling the parents much early on. And until you're doing this one-on-one interaction, regular communication, and talking to them about this, you're not going to be able to bust these myths. And of course, as comfortable as they can be with the counseling office, they should know that they can be able to walk in any time during the school year and ask you anything that is required. Of course, formal interactions are very important, but informal interactions sometimes gets out information that formal interactions don't. Because a lot of times we try and script our formal interactions in a certain way. We present to them the information that we feel is important, but there are these little tiny notes that you can give to the parents that will help them feel more comfortable. We like to share timelines at our school much early on with our parents, and that works very, very beautifully. The parents know how the year is structured. They know when we're doing our presentations. They know what we're going to be talking about. And when we do things like that, it gives them a lot of structure, and it just gives them that confidence of knowing that these are the timelines and deadlines that the counseling office has set for us. And if we follow this, we will be able to reach the goal that the student has set. And that is beautiful for the parents. Lastly, making sure that they are feeling prepared. The last 2 years are really stressful. And it's not that it is a phenomena that they are stressful. They are stressful for the child. They are stressful for the counseling office. So every year is stressful for us. But they are also stressful as a family, because the parents feel many times that it is a make or break for them. It might not be, because we as counselors understand that if you are choosing something at an undergraduate level, it is okay to change your mind at masters. But for the parents and for the students, they feel like you have to just choose whatever you need to at that start point. So it's important to make sure that they are feeling prepared for university more than anything else. So make sure you're answering their questions, responding to their emails, taking their calls when you need to, and of course setting the boundaries very well, because a lot of times parents can become overbearing in terms of they don't realize that we also need to set a boundary in terms of when you can call a counselor and when you can't. But they are stressed, so on and off, try and check in, try and make sure the student and the parent is doing okay and they are just on track. So just overall, these 3 things can be really, really helpful: communication, timelines, and making them feel prepared. With this, I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Ms. Ritu Dhingra. Thank you.
Thank you, Arshita. I think Arshita has already set the stage for the next segment. I think it's very important to understand the expectations of parents. So we thought of incorporating this little exercise to engage each one of you. First of all, I'd like to ask you, how many of your parents here? Grandparents, parents? Okay. Yeah, so I'm sure any age group that you like to just mention, age group, primary, secondary, college going. Okay, working. Okay. So we thought of putting these 3 slides together. It was a result of our conversations, and also having done a few surveys and mini researches with our own schools and talking to parents. And we've also been talking for a very long time as counselors to parents, and we come across these expectations. We did I want to put the expectations in green, because we didn't, like Arshita said, we don't want to highlight that everything is bad out there. parents are always negative. No, it's not that. We are a set of individuals who think differently. We want given a guidebook to parenting. And everything is so situational. Even two twins will not act and behave and think similarly, right? So, so I do want to give importance to that how parents think very positively as well. There is a lot of, I've come across really interesting parents who want to be involved in the school system. They want to understand the school system. They want to engage with the various processes that how do we actually evolve into those processes. For example, if it's even as small as just generating a transcript, they would like to know, and they would also like to introduce if there is a better method. As schools, we are also very open to getting those methodologies. If something that's being projected out there makes gives a reflection of the students best performance or the best profile that it projects. So we appreciate parents who are so engaged and involved with us. I see a lot of parents seeking information on upcoming schools, for non-conventional programs. This is something that's really on top of our list because today they're also very aware of what's happening. There are so many channels, there are so many platforms that they get to interact with. They want to know what are the non-conventional programs that their child might be best suited to, versus something that's not the conventional ones. We'll also have those set of parents where they look for in the subsequent points, you will see that we have a whole lot of chunk of them. And as Arshita said, that we have these cocktail conversations, and you want to show off that my child went to so and so university, and oh, he's a Harvard graduate. And I think I'll take an example of last evening. I was in the flight and I got this flurry of emails from some of the parents saying that, oh, UCLA is in town, and you should call them to the school as well, because I will not name the school, but that school got last year they took 11 children from their school. So I didn't know what to respond, to. Although this information has already gone to them, we have shared that because that's the school that's actually hosting that university. You can go and meet them. So the link and the event details, everything was shared with them. But in spite of that, there is a little pressure that came to us, and we three were all together. Our team was together traveling, and I shared. All of us got the same message, actually, with just our names changed. So there will always be a pressure from parents on that aspect, because I think somewhere we lose you lose track as parents also in this whole social image. Sometimes I think the Delhi NCR, we experience a lot. And I'm a Punjabi, but I know how Punjabis have this huge habit of showing off. And we've had it's not a general statement, but yes, we do. And the recent movie Rocky and Rani is really a good reflection of how Punjabis actually are, so the affluence just flows. So coming back to so they also want to know the lesser known colleges, because we do come across now as with the new NEP also. There's a lot of collaboration happening overseas with Indian universities and even our own Indian universities. We have loads of them now. Those who also have incorporated liberal arts education. So they would want to know the lesser known colleges. They think that it might be a better fit for them. Maybe they like a smaller classroom versus a Delhi University class, or or an Ahmedabad University. So there are many combinations that they look for, which is very heartening to see. And I would always really go all the way for such parents who want to be engaged and really help the students in the true sense to really identify the best fit for their children. Now coming to the not so pleasant experiences that our desks are flooded with, we get a lot of pressure on things like inflating grades, There is no engagement of the parent till the class 12 many times, whether they are working or not working, whatever the reasons. I'm not going into that. But sometimes parents don't get engaged in classes 9, 10, and then suddenly in class 12, they think that, why is this transcript looking like this, and why is the profile looking so weak? So there is a pressure, continuous pressure on tweaking that weak profile also, right? With the minimal parental involvement in the previous years. So they also expect that the documents should be shared with the outside counselors. That's what we have experienced. There's a lot of pressure. I think 80% of our day goes in just trying to explain to the parent that why we don't share this. Like Arshita mentioned that, of course, there are schools which don't have that support. It's all right. And they might devise their own systems to share those documents. But where there is a robust system, we don't need to share the documents with the independent outside counselors. We have our own reasons. There's also a lot of pressure on the predicted grades, which I don't think whether I mentioned here, but in class 12, yes, I think the months from September, October, even I would include August, September, October, 3 months just go in trying to, sort out this, that, there are things that trickle down to as good as submitting their internals, submitting their assignments. So obviously they're not aware of that. So it reflects in their transcripts in a little negative way. And there's a lot of pressure on that for us to hike or, give an inflated grade there. I'm sure each one of you has experienced that. There's an obsession for tier 1 universities, undoubtedly. Arshita has already mentioned that. And I think that's one pressure that we get continuously. I think this is the heart of these three, the slide that I would like to mention here. To me, parents sometimes don't look at us as normal human beings. They think we can't make mistakes. They think we will have ready-made answers all the time at every point. So that's something that I think we as people face, we as professionals who are also individuals face. With the fast changing world, I don't think we will get answers instantly. Yes, there is Google Baba, but we will not get the genuine answers immediately. So that's something which I think as counselors we face, that there's no room for mistakes. Just before this session, we were just discussing our bad experiences with some of our not so pleasant, I wouldn't say bad, but not so pleasant experiences with even students sometimes. It actually boils down to also what cultural background a student is coming from. How do they look at the school? And if you're providing this service, as career and college counseling, they expect that we should get everything on the platter, So these are some of the expectations that we collated. Arshita mentioned about the communication part. While we do give them sometimes instant answers, but we do not have them. So they expect that we should immediately respond to their messages that even now WhatsApp we get. Like last evening, I haven't still responded to the parent because I want to think about it and then give a good answer. So this is also, these are some of the points which we collated again from the little surveys that we conducted, where parents lose their grip sometimes. Even I'm also a parent, and we are we three collated our thoughts because we are three different sets of parents out here. Arshita, young, middle, and I'm like, I have a son who's in college, and a daughter who's in class 12. So we were just also, actually putting ourselves in the other shoes as well to understand that where does this come from. So collating all of that, we realized that sometimes parents are also, they lack clarity on the family goals. How many of us have actually had conversations with our children on financial goals? I face a lot of problem because parent will come and tell me that please don't encourage my child to apply to an Ivy League because I cannot spend 2.5 or 3 crores, right? But if that conversation is happening on the dining table or in the house, I think it's a good start point. So lack of clarity on family goals is something we have figured out that leads to a lot of miscommunication also with the student and the parent. This is something I think which we'll all agree. Denial about actual performance of their children, not setting realistic goals and aspirations. If I don't, as a parent, have realistic goals and aspirations, how am I going to translate that to my child? So it begins with the parents, and I think as a result of many sessions in our school, we always end up saying that I think they need more counseling. Many a times we hear teachers, we hear ourselves saying these lines that, that I think the parents need more counseling. So there's also a lot of duplication of work, in the sense, if you've got a counselor or a private person helping you outside, uh, they sometimes don't disclose that, and then they expect you, they take a lot of work from us, and then they bring in all that gyan that comes from outside on our table and say that, oh, this is how it is to be done, we were told this is the way to be done. So there's a lot of duplication of work. To eliminate that, I think we counselors keep struggling. Yes, I think Arshita had mentioned that there's a lot of pressure on putting, college essays and editing them, uh, each and every one, depending on the numbers. Not seeking prior appointments. That's something we all face. I know there will be crisis situations, but many of us have not approached counselors, with a thought that, yeah, well, they also have a time after 5 o'clock. Even though we extend, a lot of us, I'm sure, in this room extend ourselves to our home time and our family time, right? We take calls in the middle of a celebration also sometimes. So I think that awareness, I think that it just lacks little orientation to parents that we are also people like them. Yes, I face this personally many a times, and so do my colleagues. There is a lot of, I think this is more to do with little culture, the cultural backgrounds that we deal with every day. So parents feel that, if they have given some money to some counselors, they'll with heavy amounts, they can buy the power, and they are looking for backdoor entries for admissions. That I met this admission officer, and I was told that, if my child's profile looks like this, I will get admission, and so got admission based on that. There is, of course, a lot of judging and criticizing the school. Yes, we face this undoubtedly, and I would not fear saying this, even if we had parents in this room. We face those challenges in the room. So criticizing the school, comparison with the other school systems. I get every day 1 or 2 samples, and I can see schools sitting here whose samples have been, shared with me for, oh, how about making a transcript like this? How about making an LOR like this? And this is how, so-and-so school gives their predicted grades. वहां तो 5% ऐसे ही बढ़ा देते हैं. No, it's not like that. So how do you justify that? How do you even tackle that as counselors? So there is a lot of comparison with the other systems. Okay. So those were some not so pleasant things that we face. But this is one scenario we thought we'll put together. If you want, I can read from here, and while those who can read can also look at it. I would like you to just go through this and understand whether you have faced this problem in your school. It's a very mild problem. We haven't brought in very heavy problems here because we cannot resolve those, I'm sure, in this short time that we have. A conglomerate of university officials is scheduled to meet students of classes 9 to 12 in school. Each class comprises of 80 to 90 students. The CC, the college counseling update, is posted on the school website. Students and teachers are sent an internal email to attend the event. A flurry of emails from parents requesting them to attend begin to fill the counselor's inbox. A collective email on the same communication is also sent to the school principal. This is a consistent demand by the parents that they be a part of every session held in school. The CC team comprises of one full-time counselor. You relate to it? So can I just come there and ask how have you dealt with it? This one of the points. How do you deal with it? How do you say against it? You have to deal with it and we cannot deny that. Do you, because for us, student comes first. The time comes first, and then the priorities are to be set. So how do you set those priorities? What you want to know that you want to at one from that feeling of yours.
Like we take more of our time, the personal time also to send out the emails and responding to them even after going home. That's how we deal with it.
During orientation session, we set boundaries, we set internal deadlines to them. We tell them that there are sessions only for students and there are sessions for both parents and students. So this happens during an initial orientation time for upcoming batch. So yeah.
That's a good way of orienting them and setting boundaries. I think I'm getting signals from my team that I've exceeded the time.
Just want to quickly add that what we usually do at school is make sure that the parents are very well aware of how the system will work when a university comes in. There's going to be a set of universities that parents will be invited to when they're over a certain number, something that like a fair. But every time calling the parents in is not possible. And this again comes back to my first point, which is communication. If you're communicating very clearly with parents from day one and they're aware of how the system works in the school, then hitting these roadblocks it's inevitable, right? But it can be reduced for sure. You won't get 500 emails a day. You might reduce it to 50 is all I'm saying.
So I think an important, discovery or just a thought that came to us while we were collating this information, that has any parent demanded that I should be sitting in a math class for a teacher to be observed? Or should I sit in an English class? They don't demand that. So why do they demand that we should be a part of those in sessions that have planned for their children? So recently in my school, I conducted a writing workshop for classes 11 and 12. It was a beautiful workshop because of the students' engagement. We had Ashoka University and we had we had Ashoka University and we had King's College. So they came and spoke to them and they made them do some activities. And we still had a few parents who said that we would like to be a part of that session as well. So I think the reason why we as counselors don't invite them is because we want the children to also express their views openly and freely. When parents are there, again, there's an authority figure that they just take over. The parents just take over. So to avoid that, some of the sessions are not planned with the parents, while whatever the sessions have been planned, the communication goes to them. And as we set boundaries, as you also mentioned, and our colleagues also here mentioned, is very important to set in the beginning. So I think with that, I will just leave it to my next.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you
Chandni.
so much. Thank you, Ritu. Thank you, Arshita. So how is everybody feeling on listening to all that we've had to say so far? Do we feel, relatable, right? So are we feeling overwhelmed? Because no matter how many years it's been for us, I think for most parts in a day, we feel like this, right? Parents lose their grip, but we also end up losing our own. We feel depleted, we feel enervated, we feel like we are the single voice of reason in our institution, trying to drill a semblance of sense into the minds of parents and students, right? So, however, can we afford to feel defeated is the question that we really need to ask ourselves, because there is a lot at stake. So can I just get one or two responses very quickly from the audience as to what is at stake, just in a word or two at the maximum? Anybody? Yeah. So child's future, but really the future of our world, right? Because the youngsters are really our tomorrow. So whenever it is that we feel very weak, we must ask ourselves this question: what is at stake? It's the very future that is at stake. And so what we could start with doing is finding inspiration. We might feel that we know a lot based on our experience, but we all need inspiration. And it's, as a matter of fact, we all keep coming back to the IC3 conference. We might feel that, certain topics are, relatable. We've heard a lot about those before, but still we want to go back and listen to some more because we need inspiration. So I find my inspiration in books. And very recently, I happened to read about Denmark and how the Danish society was back in the 19th century. So there's a reason I put this slide here, and I promise I'll just take 2 minutes. So this is about back in the day in the 19th century, where education was just available for the urban elite and just for boys. So a great part of the population had no access to education. And this did not go down well with a gentleman who went by the name of Grundtvig. He declared that schools back in the day were dead schools, teaching dead letters. But his voice was suppressed. He was persecuted, his work was censored, but he did not bend in his beliefs. The reason was that he was too dedicated to his students and he understood what was at stake. He was able to inspire another young man who went by the name of Christian Cold, and together these two men put their minds to promoting what became the folk high school movement in Denmark, essentially meaning that every ordinary person in Denmark henceforth was able to get access to education. So I asked myself when I read about this, that if two men could make a difference in a country, why can't I in my institution, and why can't you in yours, right? So moving on to the best practices. So we have put together 3 concrete case studies for concrete takeaways. But before I talk about best practices, I really do want to mention that, like those two men who were driven not so much by their intellect, I'm sure they were very intelligent, but primarily they were driven by their love and dedication for their students. So the single most important ingredient, which is going to drive our success going forward, is going to be our affection for our students. So we asked all of you, who all are parents in the room, I think almost all of us are, and we know what it takes, right? Because our love for our children is unconditional, we come up with creative ways. So do we really feel that affection for our students as well? If we do, we will be able to figure out very creative ways of engaging with them and the parents. We will be able to put that effort in, and we will be able to endure it all. So more than anything else, my hope and our hope is really that by the end of this presentation, if somewhere we can keep even these 4 points in our mind and nurture these in our lives, we would really be able to manage the expectation of parents and their children very well. So no decoding that happened here. I think Arshita and Ritu spoke about this enough. But what I really want to do here is go a little deeper. So one thing that we must understand very clearly is that achievement in any society, in any human society, not just Delhi NCR, India, but in any human society, is a shared concept. It is shared between the student and the outside spheres of influence, which includes their parents. So we cannot weed out the parental involvement. It's not possible to shut the door on them. But yes, what we could do is that we could convert the stress that comes along with the interaction to an opportunity for more connection, trust, and for growth. That is what is important to remember. And yes, we could all argue that many of us have great systems in school, wherein we have a deadline calendar, we are very meticulous with our planning, we are very meticulous with sending out emails, or I'm very prompt as far as responding to messages on WhatsApp go. I go back home and I respond to emails as well. But what communication I am talking about here is deeper level communication. Communication which really takes the other person and where they are coming from into consideration. So this is what we have really put together through these 3 case studies. So there's a lot of content there, but we've used a standard format, so it's easy for everybody to understand. So what we've tried to showcase through these 3 case studies is really 3 kinds of parents. So in this first case study, we are talking about, and I want to mention at the outset itself, that making parents feel heard, valued, respected, and then guiding them is what we really need to do. Yeah. So in this first case study, we have a parent who was very, very concerned about her over-accomplished son. Right. So when the child is over-accomplished, there is also that anxiety attached to him or her getting into the very best institution. So this parent had a tendency of directing the course of conversation and of really commanding, which gets very difficult to take care of, right? And so the best practice or strategy, which obviously I had to develop over time, needed me to first and foremost establish very clear roles and responsibilities so that there would be no overlapping and so that there would be no conflict between the parent, me, and the student. And so what we did is that not only did we ask the students to do their goal setting and to fill out a subjective assessment, but we also asked the parent to do just the same. So the first time that we instituted a goal setting sheet and a subjective assessment sheet for the parent as well. And when during the course of conversations, these inputs, comments from the parents were incorporated into the discussion, the parent, of course, felt very, very acknowledged and very much a part of the entire process. So very simple things like allowing this kind of a parent who loves to command to go first in the conversation, to end their sentences, then for the counselor to come in to say, I agree with you, but to an extent. And I'd really like you to consider what I am now going to say to you. So things like these do make a huge difference. Even in all the spreadsheets that we were sending out to the student, we instated a column for the parent comments to come in, which also really helped this parent to become a part of this very collaborative process. So together, we were able to build consensus in taking some actions. For example, so you would have read the strengths and the confusion of the student. There was a tussle between medicine versus music, two very, very extreme ends, right? And the parents somewhere wanted the student to take on the conventional path of medicine and seeing where it takes him and then maybe doing music at a later stage in life. So we took this action of agreeing on the student going on a gap year so that he could take on more operatic roles and really learn for himself as to what he really wants to study in college. So the result of this engaged process was that after the gap year, the student was admitted to a top US university. And I don't want to brag, or I don't want to come across as someone who's trying to say that it is only these kinds of schools that are the top schools, but he did get through Harvard College. And he just graduated this year. And I'm happy to share that he majored in biology. And he was a part of the Harvard choir for all 4 years. And I spoke to him recently, and he said that he is going to do his master's in music. So this is the first case study. The second case study is of a very different parent, a very, very questioning parent. The background being both parents were CAs, and their son was very interested in studying science. So they had no idea of how to help him, but were too eager, like over eager to just be there for him. So much so that, and again, because he was so academically gifted, they wanted to get it right. So their confusion was to do with every area of the application process. Like literally, they wanted to be on top of everything. So for this kind of a parent to acknowledge their curiosity, again, we had to go back to refining our tools. So where we felt that our process is so detail oriented and we have so much to give to parents and students, along came this parent who made us rethink things, and we had to refine our tools to the extent that we had to come up with a standard operating procedure for every part of the application process. But luckily, we were able to rope in many of our grade 11 and 12 students to intern with us, who helped us to create a dossier. So we came up with lots of documents, lots of guidebooks, which were shared every now and then with these parents to quench their curiosity. And we also decided on fixing one day in a month just to answer all of the questions that these parents would have, so much so that, they would send their questions to me much in advance, so that it would be a very, very, focused discussion. So this kind, these steps again really helped the parents, the counseling team, and the students to work together. And because there was a lot of prompt communication via these tools, and via also understanding what these parents really needed. The result was that the student got through, again, not trying to promote certain kinds of universities, but just trying to say that when a student is committed, when we get parents also to understand the commitment, and when we work collaboratively with them, the result will be the best for that student. So the student did get through Johns Hopkins University for physics, and he did it by himself, really did not need to take any support from anybody else. And recently the school principal also asked these parents to participate in the parent orientation, and in fact give a talk to other parents about what it takes to work collaboratively with the counseling team. So on to the very last case study, that's the third one, and now a different kind of a parent, a very, very anxious parent because of her daughter's depression and anxiety. And of course, it's a sensitive case, and I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of, of course, she was taking a lot of support on the side, but essentially saying that that 2 years of battle while COVID was on really took a toll on the parents as well. So in my interaction with those parents, I understood that they would be just silent. They would just be silent, and they would not be able to even articulate themselves well. They would not know what to say, what they want, and had they were not even able to get to the point of being able to talk about their feelings. So for this kind of a parent who is more quiet and more observing, what does one do? First and foremost, ask a lot of open-ended questions. The whats, the hows, the whys, really giving the parent time to think through everything, to register everything, and then to be able to articulate their responses. Also, this really allowed them to feel very safe, because, when you're not throwing lots of things at them, and really understanding where they're coming from, made them feel that they can talk. So for these parents, we had to do independent counseling. I don't even remember a single time when the student, parent, and I were together in a conversation. So we had to do independent counseling, and we had to resort to a lot of storytelling techniques to be able to transport the parent and the student to a place where they could really understand everything. So for this student, the primary concern was, can I even step out of the country because of what I've been through? So again, the action that we were able to take together was for that student to go on a gap year. And in recognizing her creative instinct, she spent her gap year on really, self-care and really figuring out her options together with the counseling team. And the result was that she got through UAL for interior design. So all in all, what we'd just like to end our session with is that it's important to first understand parents and then understand how to respond to their needs. If we will react, we will not get anywhere, really. And over time, we were just figuring out amongst ourselves, and in talking to each other through these weeks and months, what we understood is that there are really these three kinds of parents. So this is something that we wanted to leave you all with, that if you think about it, for all the parents that you would have worked with, they would fall into one of these categories or the other, just these three kinds. So over years of practice, we will be able to switch fluently between these different kinds, so, and that's how you will be able to establish your best practices. So, and just going back to the slides on the expectation of parents, like Ritu already mentioned, the idea was not to sound like we are complaining because we ourselves are parents, but the idea was really to leave you all with something to relate to, something that you go through on a daily basis with your own parents. And so if you could all go back to ask yourselves that what is the worst kind that I have dealt with, and maybe to begin there to understand that what best practice you would like to come out with that kind of parent. So, perhaps this could be the learning from today's session. And of course, needless to say, there will still be very, very difficult moments. But if we can all go back to this slide, I think we'll feel very uplifted. So I'll read it out for all of us because it's really very beautiful. So the mole asked the boy, "What's your best discovery?" The boy said with confidence that I am enough as I am. So as long as we are driven by a love and dedication for students, I think that's the key really. If I'm driven by that love and dedication for students, I will definitely be enough as I am. So thank you very much. And I don't think we've left much time for Q&A.
To actually watch this video. The beautiful one. So just suggesting that go home and watch it.
Yeah. So how much time do we have for Q&A? I think 5 minutes. 5? Okay. Okay, sure.
So usually when we were saying that, Ms. Dhingra was saying that the parents expect, like they say that they are nudge a lot. Yes. But when opposite to this, I have seen the parents come with us like, we don't know anything, ma'am. We depend on you. And it becomes so overwhelming, so emotional also at times, because then they say, you are the parent now. You take the decision. So at that point of time, which I believe that we cannot do that, because after a point we have to tell them there can be many chances, maybe more than 50% chances that the child does not go to that university or any kind of that. So at that point of time, how more better we could, like, we do make them clear to them, yes, of course, the chances are very low. The chances are 50-50 maybe. What more can we do as a counselor? Like,
I
being
think
strong.
to start with that, of course, we faced many of these where parents have been totally dependent on us. And that is okay coming from a parent because you are in a place where they believe that you know best. And that is nice sometimes, but it's also very important to make them feel fully prepared for the 2 years that are ahead of them. Which is why, again, going back to where I began, communication, setting timelines, and then making them feel prepared is genuinely just key to not having us stuck in that position. Post these 3 also, you will many a times find yourself in this position. And I often see myself wearing two hats, one of an emotional counselor and one of a school and one of a career counselor. And you have to use both of those to put yourself in a position to tell the parents that I still cannot be the child's parent. I can be the college counselor who will help you bridge the gap from school to university, but I cannot be the bridge. Yeah. And you can't have kids try and walk all over you, or parents try and walk all over you in that position. But again, you have to just make sure that you're playing it right and making sure you're starting early. But I'm sure my counselors have something to
I'd
say.
go by Chandni had mentioned that go deeper into your communication, look deeply more, depending on your rapport with the parent and how things would land on the parent through your whatever conversations that will translate in that conversation. So I think that's very important to go into a deeper level and understand the child holistically.
Thanks. Can I just come in? I think to begin with, an excellent presentation. Thank you very much. Can we have a real round of applause for them? I think it was really very clear. And though at times it sounds like a story of doom and gloom, that it's parents versus us, it's really not that. It's because a homeschool partnership is critical for the success of every child. And I think what the counselors do cannot stand in a vacuum against the rest of the school. So a critical piece, and the questions that you're asking and that you have posed, I think that the ecosystem of the school has to be aligned with what you are communicating. And that cannot just be left to the guidance team. So there is no point in the guidance team saying, I'm here for your child, and the rest of the school isn't. So there has to be an ecosystem where three things are very clear. That yes, we are the good adults in your child's life. Yes, we do take parental responsibility when your children are on campus with us. I loved what you said, that if you don't have affection, if you don't care enough, don't be in a profession that has anything to do with children. And I say that to teachers very often in my school, that you can be the best pedagogue in the world, but if the child doesn't think that you care for them, they're not going to learn a thing from you. So that goes for counseling too. That at the heart of it has to be, I want what's best for you. That's number one. Number two, when the school brandishes headlines, that's when the pressure comes on you. When the school says, oh, we have to put that on our website. We got 7 Ivy Leagues, we got Oxbridge. That is where the pressure starts. But if the school's communication is, actually, we are encouraging our counselors to find the best fit university for every child, then everybody is singing from the same hymn page. And they know that there is an alignment. And I think the third bit, which all of you have stressed so categorically, we can't play God. We have to encourage parents not to play God to their children, but earnest, timely, sincere communication is critical. Because parents, what do parents want? They want the best for their child, what they think is the best, right? And I didn't hear you say, but we hear very often parents saying, pressure, Miss Supal, when do we put pressure on our child? We to never ask. We never talk about grades but the subliminal pressure that comes from the family, we have to counter that at school and not add to it. So I think there are no easy answers, but hats off to the people who actually go through this process and get exceptional results at the end. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Supal. And I just want to, I think, put a quote there. I'm just reminded of it instantly. The ecosystem part, that the first point that you mentioned. I think we've all heard that it takes a whole village to raise a child. So that's where I think ma'am is coming
and it
from.
starts early. I think we've started career days for grade 6 and 7.
Yeah.
And to open their minds and not get obsessed with the convention. So like I said, it's the ecosystem. It's the village that has to raise the child. But thank you very much. Really enjoyed your session.
Sorry, do you have time for one question?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Yes.
Yeah, so 2 of the 3 case studies mentioned students who had taken a gap year. So, how do you keep that engagement going, and what are the check-ins during the gap year?
Can I answer
Yeah,
that
sure.
as a parent? I can answer that Chandni will pitch in, but I want to say that because it's so close to my heart. My own son, who is now working in Chicago, took a gap year, and I took this decision for him because he was a very good sportsman. I didn't want him to give up his dreams. I wanted him to experiment with this profession, that he plays for some clubs. And I have Abhinav there. You just came in, right? It's so eerie that he's the one who actually guided him because he was a super senior in school. And it was so beautiful to send him to Sweden, Germany to experiment with this part of the career. So I think your question that how do you engage them? It's that bold decision, first of all, you need to help them take, because they're also going to be comparing themselves with their peers that, oh, I've got 1 year gap, and I don't know what to do. So it's essentially those 6-7 months of the gap year that you need to engage them in something which is aligned with their future interests.
And this is just an extension to what she has already asked. So here,
And Chandni, please
parents,
add.
as you've mentioned, parents do have apprehensions that, they will be, not just students, but even parents have this apprehension. So do counselors play an important role in, suggesting them a gap year? Because it is a huge thing, right?
Please, Chandni, you say that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no wrong answers here, but yes, I think it all boils down to our conviction. I mean, we have to be convinced as to why the gap year. It's not really to say that we want to just postpone this decision making because right now too much is happening and nothing is going right. So let's just kind of push the student to take a gap year because they want to get into a good university. And so let's just do it. So it cannot be something as mechanical as that. I would agree with Ritu when she said it ultimately has to be driven by some core interest that the student has, which the student was not able to amply deepen during those years of high school for various reasons, because we know what the high school calendar looks like, right? I've had enough students who are so academically gifted and so into their academic exploration that they are just not able to take out the kind of time they want to for some other engagement, which is there within them, and they want to do something about it. And I really feel in today's day and age, and COVID taught us that, what are the number of months that we are looking at in a gap year in any case? It's hardly much. It's hardly those 4-5 months, and then it's again application time. So in the larger scheme of things, it does make sense, because then the student would be sorted during those 4 years of undergrad study, being more sure of what they want to study and where they want to go.
Yeah, so I'm reminded of another student of mine about almost 12 years ago. She was a very meritorious student studying in IB curriculum. She took a conscious decision in class 11 itself that I am not going to college immediately after school because I want to enjoy my 2 years in school. And believe me, she studied very hard during the gap year also to make it to an Ivy League. That was her goal. We by default are, dealing with students who look at those kind of places. And she made it. So the clarity, I think, of what you are going to engage in during that gap year is very important.
Just very quickly, to give you an exact answer, I do check-ins every 3 months and close to the application deadline. So beginning August, I do I start with a monthly check-in, and then when it's closer, depending on EDEA, 15-day check-in, so that I know the application has gone out in time. So I know you needed that. So. Okay, so just thank you so very much for being here today and giving us your time in the morning. And I hope this was fruitful. I hope this was useful for you. Thank you so much.